Our next speaker, Gary Bauer, was so disappointed because he wanted to start off with singing, but now that's been stolen. No, I do want to say about our next speaker that he is one of the original pioneers of the pro-life, pro-family, and pro-growth values movement for more than 3 decades. Many leaders quote from Ronald Reagan. This man actually served in his administration as his Undersecretary of Education and Chief Domestic Policy Advisor for 8 years. He has served as Senior Vice President for Focus on the Family and also as President of the Family Research Council and ran for President of the United States in 2000. Today, he serves as Chairman of Campaign for Working Families PAC, dedicated to electing conservative candidates to Congress, and as President of American Values. Ladies and gentlemen, would you please welcome columnist, radio talk show host, and true values voter pioneer, Gary Bauer.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I appreciate that. I think I tell you this every year, that when you give somebody a standing ovation, you really put them on the spot. Ronald Reagan told me once at the White House that after I got out of the administration and would speak more, that if I ever got a standing ovation when I was introduced, I should sit down immediately because I had nowhere to go but down after that. So I'm proceeding at my own risk, my friends, but still, it was a very warm welcome. I appreciate it. Look, how many of you were here today when Senator Cruz had to put up with that unpleasantness in the audience? You know, folks, don't miss what this is about, okay? This is what the political left in America is today. This is the kind of harassment that you're subjected to. If you're Michelle Bachmann, or if you're Ted Cruz, or if you're the congressman that were up here a little while ago, anybody that comes to this city and stands for your values, they just don't get into debates. They don't have to deal with just an opponent. They are harassed. It's the politics of personal destruction. Ted Cruz campaigned on stopping Obamacare and told the people of Texas if they elected him senator, he would come to Washington, D.C. and do what he promised to do. And for that, he must now be destroyed. 1 year ago, when I came out to talk to you, Benghazi had just happened. I had just come down from my hotel room. Hillary Clinton and the president were welcoming the families of the dead men that were killed in Benghazi. And they were saying to these families, our hearts go out to you. We're going to get to the bottom of this. We'll find out who did this. Ladies and gentlemen, we now know they knew then who did it. Do you think that when Hillary Clinton goes around the country speaking, she has to deal with hecklers in the audience the way a Ted Cruz does? Come to think of it, maybe we ought to start adopting some of their tactics. Unbelievable, unbelievable. Anyway, my friends, this is all part of the war that we're in. Rush Limbaugh said the other day that he felt we were living in a dying country. I love Rush, but I would disagree to a certain extent. I believe we're living in a country that's being killed, not just dying. Whether it's our culture, our values, our faith, our history, all are under attack from the radical left. Day by day, step by step, America as we have known it is being pulled out by its roots from the rich soil, the nurturing earth of Judeo-Christian civilization. The moral code of Judeo-Christian civilization, everywhere it has gone, has brought decency and tolerance with it. It inspired our founders. It taught us that liberty comes from God. It protected the weak. Because of Judeo-Christian civilization, the slaves were liberated. That civilization teaches wherever it is that all human beings whether it's a newborn with Down syndrome or a 90-year-old sinking into dementia, that all human beings, regardless of the color of their skin, has dignity and value and worth because they were made in the image of God. But that civilization and what it teaches is hated. It's hated by the radical secular left, and it's hated by the radical Islamists. They disagree on everything, but they agree on this, that Judeo-Christian civilization and people like you must be destroyed if they are going to successfully remake America into something that we don't recognize. My friends, that's how important this battle is to this country and to your future. This country was founded by brilliant men, and I believe they had God's wisdom when they founded it. They built it because they wanted it to be a shining city on a hill. And today, this dear country, built by brilliant men, is governed by stupid men. Men without chest, as C.S. Lewis called similar men in his era. Think of the words that used to define the United States and our civilization. Words like decency, honor, virtue. These are now dusty verbal relics of a bygone age. How else can you explain last year, leading into the presidential campaign, the elevation to stardom of a Georgetown University co-ed by the name of Sandra Fluke? You remember who she is. Sandra Fluke, who shamelessly, as far as we can tell, I saw no sign of shame, went before a congressional committee to argue that the sexual promiscuity practiced by her and her friends on Georgetown University's campus was so pronounced that she could not pay for her birth control pills or condoms for her partners and still have money left over for her textbooks or to be able to have 3 meals a day. Now, my friends, we can sigh about that, we can fret about it, we can shake our heads, but you know what? Sandra Fluke became a factor in the election. It looked like an embarrassment, but she was used in the campaign to scare women between 18 and 30 that somehow, if Mitt Romney was elected president, they wouldn't have birth control pills. And that same tactic is being used today in Virginia against Cuccinelli in the gubernatorial campaign. It is so absurd, you don't even know what to say about it. President of the United States last year picked up the phone after Sandra Fluke testified to call her and tell her how proud he was of her. You know, I still remember when presidents made personal phone calls to astronauts to tell them how proud they were of them. But of course, the space program's in the trash can thrown there by Barack Obama. I remember when presidents used to call heroic policemen or soldiers or someone that had gone to the point of laying down or trying to put their own life on the line for somebody else. Now we live in an era where a president praises a promiscuous co-head because she thinks you ought to buy her birth control pills. That, my friends, is the definition of civilizational decline. And now we got a new heroine. How many of you are anybody from Texas? There you go. The new heroine coming out of Texas, Senator Wendy Davis. Now think about this for a second. Senator Davis stopped business in the Texas legislature. She filibustered with her now iconic pink sneakers on. And she's a heroine. Ted Cruz filibustered on the floor of the Senate against Obamacare. He's a bum. Absolutely. And what did the state senator filibuster about? Did she have some great new idea about how to create jobs, how to get the Texas economy to grow even better? No, her cause on the floor of the legislature of Texas was to insist that in every and any month of the pregnancy, that the women of Texas have the right to destroy unborn children. Now, look, there's a lot of people that consider themselves pro-life that say, well, look, in the first trimester, I can understand, maybe the baby's not, it doesn't really, it's not viable or whatever. There's some splits about that. You ask the American people if they think you can be allowed to have an abortion in the 7th or 8th month of pregnancy, they will look at you in horror. That is what the senator wanted to guarantee would be the law in Texas. Not only that, she wanted to make sure those abortions in the late months of the pregnancy took place in dirty abortion clinics that did not have to follow normal health standards. Now, this woman, I am told by the evening news every night, so it must be true, is the hope of the Texas Democratic Party. They believe that she's got a good chance to be the next governor of Texas. What in the world happened to the party of FDR, Harry Truman, and JFK? The party that wanted to protect the little guy in America. The party that today abandons the littlest guy of all to the abortionist's knife. What happened to that party? My friends, if Texas, in their wildest imagination, would elect this woman, I can't imagine it, but it tells us something, that she is considered a heroine. With her bumper sticker, abortion for any reason in dirty clinics. Now there's a cause you can rally to. If not many months ago, President Obama went to a convention of abortionists. People who profit from the deaths of little babies. Now, the president has spoken out about the dirty profits of the bankers, the dirty profits of the drug companies, the dirty profits of our energy industry. But he proudly walked in to face an audience like this. Imagine a room. It was filled with at least this many people. People who get up every morning and they've only got one thing to do that day: destroy innocent human life. I'm told the feeling in the room was electric. The president getting this incredible response. This president that cannot find one abortion he would stop. Gazing into the eyes of thousands of abortionists who've never found the baby they were willing to save. And looking out into that crowd, he said the one thing, lots of political figures come speak to them. But he said the one thing they yearned to hear. He looked into their eyes and said, "Keep it up, and God bless you." God bless you. Now think about this for a second. The people that he asks the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob to bless, those people have destroyed more black babies, have exploited more black women than the Ku Klux Klan in their most racist dreams could have ever hoped to kill. and the first man of color to occupy the office of the presidency goes to those people who locate their abortion clinics intentionally in minority, low-income areas, praises them, and asks God to bless their work. Ladies and gentlemen, he ought to be ashamed of himself. I listened to the wonderful remarks from my friend Michelle Bachmann. Man, I'm going to miss her in Congress. Like her this week, last couple of weeks, I focused a lot, as I'm sure you did, what was happening to our vets here in Washington, D.C. I found myself thinking a lot about Spike Bauer. That was my dad. He was a janitor, never finished high school. He was no saint, my friends. I'm not going to make him something that he wasn't. He had a tough life. He was an orphan, wrestled all his life with why his birth parents had abandoned him. He drank too much. He had what today is called an anger management problem. He didn't earn the name Spike by playing chess, I want to tell you. Spike Bauer, he couldn't quote many Bible verses, but he loved God. He couldn't tell you all the statistics about why children need mothers and fathers, but he loved me and he loved my mom. And even though we had a lot of hard times, I don't remember there ever being a time when he didn't figure out a way to make enough money to keep food on the table and pay the mortgage. My dad was in the Marines in World War II, 1st Marine Corps Division in the South Pacific. When I was growing up, I didn't fully understand. I used to try to get him to talk about it, and he never would until eventually I wore him down. And one night we sat at the kitchen table, and he told me unbelievable things that he saw and things that he had to do in service to his country. And I found myself wishing I had never asked him. They haunted me for years. I couldn't imagine anybody having to go through that. These last 2 weeks, it was men like Spike Bauer that were told they couldn't go to the memorial built in their honor. One of those honor planes that landed out at Reagan National, filled with guys like my dad, was met by a bunch of reporters. And they went up to these veterans and they said, you know the memorial is closed, right? And you came all the way to Washington to go to a closed memorial? And the one guy responded, well, when we got to the beaches of Normandy, they were closed too. I couldn't help but think about the fact that the President of the United States, now look, don't be mistaken about this. If we don't accomplish anything in this lousy several weeks of this battle, make sure your neighbors understand that the reason that veterans couldn't visit their memorials is that the President of the United States ordered the Office of Management and Budget to order the Park Service to make life miserable for any American using our parks, anybody that wanted to go to those memorials. The park police said it. We've been told to make life miserable, the one lady said. She probably isn't working at the Park Service anymore. And so the President of the United States, on his orders, has a fence built around the World War II memorial, but he sure won't build a fence at the southern border to keep out illegal immigrants, keep out our veterans. Oh yeah, he'll do that. My friends, if my father were alive today, I would not be here giving this speech. I would be down at the D.C. jail putting up the bail to get him out of jail. How much more from this bitter cup do we have to drink? How much more? The Pew Research poll showed a few months ago that the majority, overwhelming majority of the American people now believe that our liberty is in jeopardy. Not from Nazism, not from communism, not even from radical Islam, although I could certainly make that case. No, they think that their liberty is in jeopardy from their own government. Well, a lot of Americans might be confused about the events of the last 2 weeks, but on this, they agree with us. They know government's too big. They know more and more it encroaches on our liberty. Darrell Issa said the other day, Congressman Issa, we are entering a period of love my country, but fear my government. My old boss, Ronald Reagan, once said, much to the chagrin of the leftist elites, we are a nation that has a government, not the other way around. Right? In my travels around the country, I talk to a lot of people like you, but I talk to people on Wall Street. I talk to lots of people in a lot of different walks of life, and I am hearing this over and over and over again. There is a growing sense of unease, a feeling that we are on the edge of an abyss, that something really terrible is going to happen. I was on a website not too long ago when a young Catholic father went online to share a story. He had taken his sons to Mass that Sunday, and he was watching his boys kneeling and praying. And he said suddenly this wave of nausea came across him because he realized that if he continued to do what his parish priest told him to do, which is to raise up his children with godly values, to follow the Scripture, that if he continued to do that, he was probably preparing his sons for prison. And then he wrote this: I'm not talking about troubled times ahead for my grandchildren's children in some possible future. I'm talking about my kids. So revolutionary have been the recent changes in America. Persecution is close. And it's not just guys like this everyman, this average Catholic father, Cardinal George in Chicago, not too long ago wrote the following: I expect, he said, to die in bed. Most of us do, a hospital bed, a bed at home. But he said, my successor will die in prison. And I believe it is possible his successor will die a martyr in the public square right here in Chicago. A bishop, a cardinal of the Catholic Church said that. My friends, our founders wouldn't recognize the country they gave us. If they were in Washington, D.C. the last couple of weeks, it would be overwhelming to them, the power that is now vested in the presidency. They would marvel how big government has grown, how much our liberties are shrinking. This is a country that has so much technology, so many scientific advances. We are searching for the smallest particle of matter that composes all things. I suspect we'll find it. We can aim our telescopes to the furthest regions of the universe and pick up light from stars so far away it is beyond our imagination. But we can't, as a nation, see anymore the Creator that made those things. Today, the God that gave us our liberty is a smaller and smaller part of our national life. But my friends, the one thing that's imperative as this conference goes on through the weekend and that eventually you go home, that you not leave here full of despair. I'm not full of despair. If 80-year-old vets can stand up to this kind of, whatever you want to call it, this mean-spiritedness that now governs us, Are we going to hesitate to stand up to it? My friends, there are things we haven't even tried yet in this battle. And I suspect those things are coming. I suspect that civil disobedience may be necessary someday. Not by the left. They've used it all their lives. Right? But if middle America ever gets up one morning and says, you know what? This far and no further, you're not pushing me anymore. That day will be a new day in America, right? Let me leave you with some words from Ronald Reagan, a speech he delivered in Florida, a speech best known for the fact that in that speech he called the Soviet Union the focus of evil in the modern world. And for that, the roof came down on him. Evil. Well, that's a value judgment. Can't do that, you know. Now, the president was speaking about communism. Apply his words today. Reagan said the following: I believe we shall rise to the challenge. I believe that communism is another sad, bizarre chapter in human history whose last pages even now are being written. I believe this because the source of our strength in the quest for human freedom is not material, but is spiritual. And because it knows no limitation, it must ultimately triumph over those who would enslave their fellow man. For the words of Isaiah, he giveth power to the faint, and to them that have no might he increases strength. That they wait upon the Lord shall renew their strength. They shall mount up with wings as eagles. They shall run and not be weary. Ladies and gentlemen, I am not weary. You are not weary. The heartland is not weary. We will restore our constitutional republic. We will throw the bums out, and we will reclaim America as a shining city upon a hill. God bless you. Thank you very much. Never give up.